What's going on, everybody? Teach back again with another video, and today we're running through my Week 7 NFL Power Rankings. Tell me what you thought about this last week of football. Who do I have too high? Who do I have fallen too low? Love to hear your thoughts. Enjoyed today's video. Be sure to hit that like button if you're new around here. Want to hit that big red subscribe button. Mean the world to me. But I always know more of your time. Let's jump right into it. So, Carolina Panthers, staying right where you were last week. Sorry. Thought this team was a sneaky kind of cover this week with, the Steve Wilks, new coach factor. Might have given them a little bump. The Rams have been struggling, but yeah, one pass beyond the line of scrimmage. Hard to win football games that way. So the Panthers stay put at 32. Commanders and Bears flip. I mean, if we thought 12-9 was boring, 12-7 was certainly a privilege. So Commanders, you get the win. You move up a spot. We'll see about this Carson Wentz injury situation. Texans, them and the Lions both on a bye this week. So the Texans did not get moved, but the Lions did get nudged down due to some of the order moving around. So that kind of leads us into the Denver Broncos. And, I know I haven't fallen 10 spots, and it's like, wow, that was really quick all at once. But, I even said it last week. It just kind of felt like, one more loss, and then, they were going to have a mean slide ahead of them just because of the teams that were bundled underneath them. So it was kind of an exaggerated slide just because of that. And, man, if you weren't going to win on Monday night against the Chargers in that type of game where your defense, you took away Mike Williams and you forced the Chargers to try to figure it out with, guys like, Josh Palmer and maximizing Gerald Everett and Austin Eckler as a pass catcher. Like, you had Denver right where you wanted them. You even got a couple big plays out of Russ. Like, he was even moving around, and even plays that kind of didn't go anywhere. It felt like vintage Rush just a little bit. And you didn't win. And you went to overtime and you lost. So, also, big losers were people who bet the Justin Herbert touchdown prop on DraftKings. So, pour one out for all of us. But anyways, the Broncos are not good, so they're down to 27. The Jags down a handful of spots. This is, I kind of wish I didn't, move them back up. A handful of weeks ago, I was like, what? I had some people commenting, it's a conversation down below in the comment section. I say that all the time. I was like, what? I'll budge a little bit. And they choked against the Colts. Do I need to say anything more? I mean, that's brutal. So I'd love to see this team add another wide receiver at the deadline. Maybe that's enough of an impact to kind of hopefully get more out of Trevor Lawrence on a consistent basis. I think he played well. It's just, I don't think that offense goes so far. So I think adding some more firepower certainly goes a long way. And, Tyson Campbell's been great at outside corner. But dude, man, who was lined up opposite of Alec Pierce, that dude was put in the toaster. Anyways, let's move on to the Cleveland Browns. They're down a couple of spots. Joe Woods is the DC. That guy's got to be on a hot seat, right? Like, the amount of talent on that side of the ball is pretty impressive. Like, it's one of those things where you look at that team on paper and you're like, yeah, it could be a top 10 defense. There's talent on all three levels, and then you bring in a Deion Jones. Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure. There's names everywhere. Myles Garrett, dude's a game wrecker. And they just have not gotten there. And that secondary looks confused. There's busted coverages. And, part of it, too, like, you look at John Johnson III, right? He goes from playing under, Brandon Staley, this, defensive, I don't want to call him a guru just because he is so young, but guy got a head coaching job because of, his defensive philosophy and how he uses players, et cetera, et cetera. And then he goes to Joe Woods and he has, two of the worst years of his career. Some of that's like, hey, Joe Johnson's got to play better, or John Johnson, has got to play better. But some of that's also like, man, there's only so much coincidence that makes for coincidence. And I think John Johnson III having, back-to-back rough seasons and, Grant Delpit not living up to his, my draft expectations. Now, part of that was some of the concerns at LSU. Anyways, all these players basically not hitting your expectations. I think that kind of reflects back on Joe Woods. And they don't start figuring it out quick. They're probably going to have to make a change there at that DC spot. Moving on to the top 24 now, we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're up a spot, They beat Tampa Bay, which, name value and, like win value alone, awesome. But reason I didn't touch that game from a betting perspective was first career home start for Kenny Pickett. It just kind of felt like it was going to play weird. And plus with Tampa Bay, which we'll talk about on the next slide, until they figure it out, I would just lay off. Like, it's just impossible to predict when the team's going to break out of a shell. So for Pittsburgh, hey, one of the prettiest of wins, but you got it done 2018 at home. You got enough defense, right? And enough timely offense. Chase Claypool makes a couple of big plays. Mitch Trubisky comes in and kind of, stables the waters, if you will. Pretty solid win there at home for Pittsburgh. Still 2-4 team, but I didn't expect them to beat the Bucs, so I give them credit. Next, the Cardinals, they continue their slide. This team just looks lost. Now you're losing Marquise Hollywood Brown potentially for the season. He's getting a second opinion, so we'll have to wait and see. But That could be disastrous. They just made the move for Robbie Anderson, which takes him out of my trades video this upcoming week, but I think I have an idea of who I want to have replace him. But that could be an interesting ad, especially if Hollywood Brown's not out for the year, because even with Hollywood Brown, I was like, yeah, they could use another guy. We started to see Rondale more, but more. Poor choice of words. But we started to see more of Rondale, and, I thought it looked pretty good against Seattle. Not perfect, but it looked pretty good. I liked what I saw. But that being said, adding one more guy into the offensive mix with DeAndre Hopkins also coming off suspension this week, okay, I'm interested to see what this offense looks like. And, maybe, Hollywood Brown's out for the rest of the year, and it's D-Hop, Robbie Anderson, and Rondale Moore. That's not a bad trio. I can work with that, but man, if you get Hollywood back, then that 1 through 4 becomes kind of something I'm interested in. Seattle Seahawks, who bested the Cardinals. They're up and over Arizona, and this wasn't the week where Geno Smith kind of took the world by storm, but dude, Kenneth Walker, man, K-Walk, kid looks good. So that's a huge plus, and that guy kind of just felt like a Pete Carroll running back, and huge production, especially considering how good Rashad Penny was playing before that. One of the best weeks you've seen this defense put together, and man, Tariq Woolen, 4 picks in the season now? They might have something there. And, on that interception against Hollywood Brown, that was exactly what made him like a worthy project. Now, granted, he went in the 5th round. He went way lower than I thought. I thought a team was going to spring for him in the 2nd or the 3rd. Man, I mean, he goes stride for stride with Hollywood Brown down the field, who's one of the fastest receivers in the league. Don't know his exact 40, but I would assume low 4.3s, somewhere in that vicinity. Woolen goes step for step with him, and then once the ball's put in the air, it could have been a 50-50 ball against any other corner, but just because he's 6'4", pass was intended for him, essentially. He just brought it in, and then it's Hollywood Brown trying to play DB. Man, if that's what they're getting as a rookie, sheesh, that could be a huge find. And then, Kobe Bryant, still some time for him to learn and get better, so, man, I'm intrigued to see what that Seattle secondary looks like at the end of the season, because Tariq Woolen might be him. Atlanta Falcons, kind of like Seattle, where I think there's enough offensive firepower, and we're starting to see Atlanta be able to do it in a couple different ways, just like Seattle. Seattle this past week wins with a run game. Week before that, they were going toe-to-toe with the Saints through big passing plays. And then you get for the Falcons, it's like, yeah, we've seen them gash defenses like Cleveland with the run game, but then get the ball in space to Kyle Pitts, and Drake London's a hard guy to bring down. So this offense is starting to find ways to win in a variety of ways, and Marcus Mariota's doing just enough. They incorporated his legs a ton into this week's game plan. Arthur Smith, while it may not have been perfect as a start, his touches on this offense and as a play caller are starting to really become visible for anybody who watches this team. And there's offensive talent there. So them in Seattle, problems on defense for sure, but there's enough offensive firepower to at least keep teams honest, and they'll stay close in games because of it. Colts up a couple spots. I still don't think this team's all that great, but hey, took care of business against an AFC South opponent, and Alec Pierce looks like a really interesting vertical wide receiver. That being said, the Colts passing game went in a completely different way. Average up to target just over 4 yards, and time to throw was drastically shorter for Matt Ryan. I think that's kind of the offense you have to play in. I just think outside of Michael Pittman, do they have a wide receiver who really fits that type of offense? Because Alec Pierce is a vertical, route tree guy, slants and bubble screens, drags, and not necessarily what you want to have him run. You want to goes, posts, comebacks off of that. That's kind of Pierce's bread and butter. You even saw that in the last touchdown, of course. He toasted his corner, like I said earlier, and he got a big play touchdown to win the game. That's Alec Pierce. So maybe that's like, the counter off it. You force defenses to play down, and then eventually Pierce can get over the top. Maybe. But if they're going to continue to play this shallow, average depth of target, get the ball out quick, I'm interested to see what wide receivers are, being the focal points of that offense. Or is it tight ends? Is it Michael Pittman and tight ends? Maybe that's enough to get by. So still having to wait and see on this Colts team, but it's interesting to see where this new offense and, that might take this team moving forward, because, the AFC South is still open. Raiders won a bye week, so we don't need to talk about them much. Saints down 3 spots. I don't even think Andy Dalton looks bad. In a lot of ways, it might be the guy for New Orleans. We'll see once Jameis comes back, but it's roller coaster or like consistent meh. Which one do you want? And again, I don't even think Dalton's played all that terrible. Not having his top 3 wide receivers this week made a huge impact. And then Adam Troutman even got hurt midway through. So yeah, just not an ideal spot for a wide receiver, or a quarterback to try to thrive down basically all of his top 3 wide receivers, top 4 playmakers. We're going to throw Troutman in there, excluding Alvin Kamara. So 4 of the top 5 or 4 of the top 6 playmakers on this team. So that's a tough spot. But that being said, this defense giving up that come from behind. And granted, there's only so much you can do to stop a Jamar Chase and a Joe Burrow when they're hot. man, I just still have concerns about this defense, and the secondary is included in that. And it's just like, man, did I oversell myself in the Saints this year? Kind of feels like I have. Dolphins down 4 spots. We'll see what this quarterback situation plays out moving forward. It sounds like Tua Tagovailoa is going to be starting on Sunday night against Pittsburgh. I think that is an upgrade over Skylar Thompson, but still almost 10 yards average depth of target. I mean, Mike McDaniel, that Shanahan offense will do as that offense does. So even with Skylar Thompson, they were able to push the ball on the field, get the ball in space. Tyreek Hill has gaudy numbers. That offense is a cheat code for production. Just Skylar Thompson, I don't think made enough plays. And Teddy Bridgewater, of course. I'm talking about Thompson like he played most of the game. Really, it was Teddy Bridgewater for more than Thompson. But honestly, I give that credit. I give that game a lot more credit to Minnesota than I do blame to Miami. But we'll see what this quarterback situation plays out to be next week and beyond. On to the top 16 now. The Jets and the Giants, the 2 New York teams, are now in the top half of this rankings. And man, I mean, I was down on both of them. I was kind of optimistic about the Jets, but 3-2 start, winning in Lambeau with Zach Wilson have a pedestrian game was not something I would have anticipated. So give a ton of credit to both these teams. I mean, they're exceeding my expectations for sure, and they'll continue to climb these rankings as long as they keep winning. So start with the Jets. I mean, dude, Quinnen Williams has finally hit his stride. He has become that guy who we were having debates about him or Nick Bosa, who's the best player in this class. So that's a huge hit there for the Jets. Sauce Gardner playing like one of the best corners in football. Not even one of the best rookie corners, not one of the best young up and one of the best corners in football. And because of his play, it kind of felt like a bad matchup for Green Bay. That's why, in my picks league and on the hurry up offense, talking about on the Jets, I just don't think the Packers are just supposed to be able to blow them out, to win by a touchdown. And obviously they didn't even win outright. So ton of credit to the Jets. And again, getting it done with a pedestrian Zach Wilson performance. This was not a game where Zach Wilson, fourth quarter drives against Pittsburgh. None of that. This was, Breece Hall's legit, dude. Like, that guy can make it happen. So that and enough defense, and then, an ugly first half. So you're really only having to win in a 30-minute period over the, third and fourth quarters. Hey, ton of credit to the Jets. Again, winning on the road in Lambeau. No easy task. And then the Giants, I mean, it's a guy who's been, down on the Giants saying they're a fluke. They're not real. They're not really competing for the NFC East. I mean, that becomes harder to say when you take down the Ravens. Now, granted, that game, in New York, so a little home field advantage there. Now, granted, I don't think MetLife has, or MetLife, Meadowlands have that much, home field gravitas. It's not a, mile-high city or, even the 12 in Seattle or something like that. But, man, a ton of credit to the Giants. They're getting just enough offense, a few timely turnovers. I mean, their turnover margin this year is only +2, so I don't even know if I could say that, but Wink is finding the stops at the right times, which now granted that leads me to say that I don't think this is, sustainable, because eventually those stops will perhaps evaporate or they won't come at the right time. But the offense is also just getting enough out of an offensive unit where the trust in the wide receivers is next to none. And Daniel Jones using his legs, Saquon Barkley as one of the best individual playmakers with the ball in his hands. Ton of credit to Daboll, how much he's been able to get out of Saquon Barkley. It's been really impressive. So and that's with, Evan Neal not playing, fantastic as a rookie. Struggles for him early on. I mean, this team's they're just sound right now. Again, +2 turnover margin. Daniel Jones has been this guy who's been, prone and plagued by, turnovers, bad decisions, fumbles, and now he's getting the ball out quick. You take away some of the big plays that he would also generate, but in a lot of ways, that's just been the working, point of attack for the Giants, Hey, we'll play conservative, we'll play safe, we'll limit turnovers, and our defense will find just enough stops for us to keep it close and keep us interesting. And hey, 5-1, ton of credit to the Giants. Titans were on a bye, so they stayed there at 14. Patriots up 3 spots, and I mean, Bailey's happy, 300+ yards. I mean, I'm not saying QB controversy, but be interesting to see, because tool-wise, him and Mac Jones are really similar. Maybe you have a little bit more mobility. Maybe Mac Jones can, chuck it a little further. But, all things considered, I mean, Zappy's moving the ball in that offense, and hey, all the people who wanted to, trash on Matt Patricia, back-to-back weeks where, hey, the Lions' defense is historically bad, but they still blanked the Lions 29-0. I think more credit in that game goes to the New England defense. But then in this one, I mean, they dominate the Browns. And both sides of the ball look really good in this one. So, man, the Patriots coaching staff, maybe they were on to something. We just didn't give them enough time initially. But, hey, I'm impressed. I'm interested. And, again, it comes back to what is this team going to do with the quarterback position moving forward? I'm interested. I think Mac Jones is better than Bailey Zappi, but we'll see. Anyways, the Rams, they did win. I'm going to have them stay put at 12 just because they beat Team 32 in this ranking. So hopefully that's okay with all the Rams fans out there. Packers and Bucks. I couldn't keep them in the top 8 anymore. These two teams are just not who we expected them to be. And now we're through 6 weeks of the season, which is 1/3 of the way through. The sample size is enough to believe that is who they are right now. That can change. I'd say the Bucks, the team that won the Super Bowl in 2020, that wasn't the same Tampa Bay team we saw at the beginning of the year, or even midway through the season when they had just lost to the Saints for a second time. They were like 7-6. We'll give them some time. And even that sideline outburst from Brady screamed to his offensive line. Apparently he mouthed like, you guys are better than what you're playing like. It just feels like that Tampa Bay team is just not clicking. Early on, you start seeing Mike Evans picking on an XFL secondary as Pittsburgh was down there with 3 corners and Mika. You saw it early. Team gets to midfield and can't go anything further, and selling for 3 as opposed to getting 7. These little bit of things, you don't notice them and they don't feel that big until it goes on for 6 weeks to start the season. But it just feels like this team's 1% of the way off, and they're just off the track. So we'll see how that might potentially course correct. I'm interested. And then for Green Bay, just below them, this wide receiver position. Now Randall Cobb hurt. How big of an injury is that going to be? This team just needs a dude they can trust to get open and make big plays. Yikes. And also that run defense. Yikes. And this was the defense I ranked as number 1 coming into the season. They've kind of let me down, especially against the run. So, yeah, I'm concerned. This Packers and Tampa Bay teams are not what they were supposed to be coming into the year. So there's time for them to kind of course correct and get back on track. And maybe it's just a slow start, but I'm concerned. And because of that, I had to take them outside the top 8. They just didn't deserve to be on the first slide anymore. Then the 49ers, I'm going to have them, stand pat. Yeah, they lost to Atlanta, but I think over the last couple of weeks, you've seen the Jimmy Garoppolo experience. He's fine. He's good enough when you're playing from ahead against Carolina, but then you fall behind, even against an opponent who I don't think is better than San Francisco and Atlanta. But the second Jimmy G is playing from behind and he has to try to create big plays, he throws 2 picks. So we're getting the full Jimmy G experience. I could have moved San Francisco down, but also once you see this top 8, you'll understand where I'm coming from. The league right now is madness. Every team is 3-3, it feels like. And there's so many teams with lofty preseason expectations that have kind of fallen a step or 2 short of that. So let's go ahead and talk. Dallas Cowboys, they're up 2 spots despite a loss. Yeah, I know that sounds insane. But one, I do weigh injuries and specifically the state of your quarterback position. And the plan is for Dak Prescott to come back. I'm sorry, Dak Prescott is better than Cooper Rush. Sorry for those holding out. But, this past week we finally saw what, Cooper Rush, truly is in a game where, again, kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo, he has to come from behind. You have to have the quarterback win that game. Cooper Rush just ain't that guy. Dak Prescott at least opens that door, at least a little bit more, to me, pretty significantly more. So this team gets its starting quarterback back. I think they'll be better because of that. They can open up the offense, and instead of winning games 20-17, maybe they're winning games, 30-17. So I'm excited to see, what that offense looks like. The Bengals up 4 spots. I hate that they're moving up this much, but the teams right below them, had to bring the Pats, the Bucks down, the Packers and the Bucks down, and it's like, okay, well, I guess Cincinnati's a top 7 team then. I don't really love that. Again, this is not Super Bowl predictions, regular season finale, anything like that. This is just where we are right now going into week 7. And hey, ton of credit to Cincinnati, come from behind win. It was cool to see Chase and Burrow back in the Superdome down in New Orleans, but They handled, they did just enough. And, this was, I think the most encouraging thing out of it was they trusted Joe Burrow in the game, kind of like what we saw Cincy do and pivot towards midway through last season where it's like, all right, yeah, we can't run the ball that well. Why don't we just go ahead and let our former number 1 overall pick win us this game? And that's kind of what we saw in Jamar Chase, big plays, especially late, So I don't love them as a top 7 team, but I was encouraged and liked what I saw this past Sunday. The Ravens only down 2 spots. Now, how do I justify this? They lost to the Giants, who a team I'm not very high on, and they're 5-1, but I don't really think they're truly 5-1. Man, again, the entire AFC North outside of Pittsburgh is 3-3. The entire NFC West outside of Arizona is 3-3. Half of the AFC North is 3-3. The other half's 2-4. The NFC South has a bunch of 3-3 teams. There's going to have to be somebody whose record doesn't really match up to being a top 6 team. And, I look at Baltimore, and it's the last 2 weeks, it's Lamar can't hit a throw and then late turnovers from Lamar. Okay. Another example, this team is going to go as far as he goes. That's troublesome because when he's great, awesome, no worries. But when he struggles like he has the last couple weeks, it's this team really can't get off the ground. And also this felt like a week where you really missed Rashad Bateman. Love to see this team add one more wide receiver, but they seem to be pretty consistent and pretty, headstrong in their ways. That, hey, Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman, once he's healthy, that's enough. So we'll wait and see. But man, that being said, with all that pessimism, the defense has improved each of the last couple of weeks, especially in the win against Cincinnati. And once you clean up Lamar Jackson's play, this team's right back on track, and then they feel like a top 6 team. So it just comes down to Lamar kind of figuring it out. And we're seeing we're in a time in league history where quarterbacks are struggling. Offenses are having a hard time of it. Defenses have kind of come back, and that's why the unders are so prevalent across the league. And that's why QB ratings, PFF grades, QB ratings, if you're looking, or QBR, whatever ESPN calls it, QB WAR, all of it's down a little bit, and it's because defenses are kind of struck back. So I'm hoping Lamar figures it out, but if he doesn't, then this team is definitely going to be sliding down. Chargers, Vikings, moving to the top 5. Do I really think they're top 5 teams? If we're talking about who I think is most likely to win the Super Bowl, they're probably outside the top 5 of that conversation. But right now, both coming off decent wins. The Vikings, against a tough Minnesota team on the road, where you even saw the picture where it's like a 30-degree difference between one sideline and the next. So I think there's some grit involved there for a Minnesota team, and survived the late push from Teddy. Hold on, which was a great sign. They won by 8. Feels like a lot of times Minnesota will let it get even closer. It's it was a 1-score game, but now it's 3 points. Now it's 2. What I'm saying. So they kept it at an arm's length away. So, and plus, anytime you win on the road, that's a big win. The Chargers. See, they were at home, but I think the Broncos are the exact right defensive matchup to stop Los Angeles, especially with no Keenan Allen. This is exactly what I was saying on the hurry up offense. Go back and fact check me if you don't believe me. I have the receipts right there in that video. But with no Keenan Allen, like Pat Surtain was going to take away Mike Williams, and that he did. And then it's like, all right, can Josh Palmer win me a game? I liked him a lot coming out of Tennessee, but the answer right now is no. And is Gerald Everett and Austin Eckler enough? Probably not. So that game was a full-on struggle bus. And, dude, shout out to Dustin Hopkins for, the Chargers didn't even cover in this game, by the way, against, Denver. But Dustin Hopkins, literally on that last kick down to a knee, like that guy is not 100%. And he made 4 huge kicks, all within 40 yards, like relatively, makeable for, an NFL kicker. But, dude, with an injury? That's ballsy. I like it. So, respect to the Chargers. Ugly win, but a win nonetheless. And then the Eagles take care of business against the Cowboys. They are the lone undefeated squad. But I have them staying put at 3. I have the Bills and the Chiefs kind of where they were last week. Bills are my Super Bowl pick. I like the Chiefs from a betting perspective, but took the Bills to win. So, Buffalo, number 1 team in the league, in my opinion. They went into Arrowhead and took care of business against Kansas City. And I think the Eagles, and I think the Super Bowl we're playing today, I think the line would still be, Bills, favored against Philadelphia. I think the Chiefs would even be favored against Philadelphia. So I kind of lead that in my power rankings, despite I know the Eagles are still the last unbeaten team. But that's going to do it for my Week 7 NFL power rankings. Tell me what you think down below in the comment section. Who do I have too high? Who do I have fallen too low? Where's your favorite team? Where do you think they should be versus where I have? Love to have your thoughts. It's a conversation down below. Let me hear your thoughts, and I'll respond to every comment. Let's talk about it down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed today's video, seriously would help me out a ton if you hit that like button. If you're new right here, want to see more football content, hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej. I'm signing off.